Hello everyone, this is Surya. I'm sorry if there's been some delay in the videos that I've been putting out because my exams are coming up. I need to prepare. So I hope you can excuse delay. Honestly, there's no excuses, but yeah, I'm back. I'm going to make the videos again. So let's just forget about all this nonsense and let's just get into today's topic. I hope it's quite interesting for everyone. So today's topic, we're going to be looking at learning and memory. Learning and memory is something that is unequivocally important to every human being that's on this planet, right? Everyone's very interested in how to understand more, how to learn quickly, and how to consolidate your memory. It's very important. Especially as a medical student, I would think that I know a bit more than the other people regarding the concepts of understanding the memory patterns and the stuff that happens in the brain when you read a word or a telephone number or anything you want to memorize. So today what we are going to do is that I'm going to explain learning and memory uh, as a difference to my normal videos. This video is going to be more aimed at making a layman understand how the memory circuits work because as I understand it, it's kind of difficult for everyone to understand. But yeah, I'm going to help everyone understand exactly how simple learning can be. So let's get right into it. Again, we're going to start with the glossary as is visible on the screen. So let's go over some medical terms first. People who are not really interested in medicine, you can just skip ahead when I start to explain the circuits. But okay, so anterograde amnesia. Anterograde amnesia is basically the inability to establish long-term memories, especially new ones, right? Now, anterograde basically means forward, right? You can kind of understand it as opposed to retrograde, yes? So, new long-term memories, meaning that something in your memory circuit that you want to remember, maybe your cousin had a baby or someone in your family recently died. So you would want to remember these topics. So a lot of times, people with anterograde amnesia will not be able to recall these large events in their life later on when you ask them, right? So now we're going to look at Pavlovian conditioning. Pavlovian conditioning, I think all of us are really familiar with the work of Pavlov. Pavlov was a scientist who's credited to the famous dog, bell, and salivation experiment. I think everyone kind of remembers it. So I'm just going to explain to you what unconditioned response is. So let's take the example of Pavlov himself. What Pavlov basically did to people who don't exactly know what Pavlov explained, which is surprising because almost everybody knows. But anyway, so Pavlov basically created this concept that if you show a conditioned response, a conditioned stimulus and an unconditioned stimulus that produces an unconditioned response. Now, I'm talking a lot of this is terminology, but I'm going to break it down for you guys. So, conditioned response basically means the expected outcome of a stimulus, right? Sorry, this is for unconditioned response. Yes, remember, unconditioned stimulus will give an unconditioned response. Yes, so if I bring a plate of food in front of the dog will salivate. Yes, so me bringing the plate of food is the unconditioned stimulus, and the dog salivating is the unconditioned response. Hammer this into your head, okay? Like, this gets a little bit confusing, but it's very simple, I assure you. Now, if I ring a bell when I'm giving the food, right? This bell is the conditioned stimulus that I want to give the dog. So basically, the end goal of the experiment is that I'm just going to ring the bell and the dog will start salivating. Yes? So when this happens, right, that means that the Pavlovian conditioning is a success. And most of us know that Pavlov succeeded in this. That when one day he kind of didn't give the plate of food, but he just rung the bell, which made it seem to the dog that there might be food coming. So it started salivating. So a conditioned stimulus provided an unconditioned response, right? Hammer this into your brain. Uh, it's not only is it asked everywhere, you should probably know this, and it's not really a difficult concept. Now, habituation. Habituation basically means decreased response. Now, why does habituation occur? Habituation occurs because if you have like a stimulus in your mind, in which basically what's going to happen is that, let's just say that you're learning, right? Let's just say, wait 1 second, my something went in my eye, but yeah, okay, much better now. Thanks. Thank you for waiting. I'm not going to edit that out. Now, where were we? We're looking at habituation. So what habituation basically is that the decrease in response. Now, when does a response become less? Basically, if you give the same stimulus over and over again, and it's not a harmful stimulus, it's not a pleasure causing stimulus that makes the body want the stimulus, right? If it's a painful stimulus, body will try to say, okay, I should maybe take steps to not go there. And if it's like just a normal stimulus, then the body doesn't really care. So if I tell you to learn a list of phone numbers, uh, you're not going to be able to learn all of them. But if I hold a gun to your head and I tell you that you better learn this phone numbers or I'm going to shoot, then you have a much higher chance of getting through the information, which is why I think that somehow Indians have fallen into this weird thing where Indian students are kind of accepted as they're slightly better than foreigners, mainly because the parents in India will, you know, will hammer this into you. They will literally hammer this into you that if you don't solve this math equation, the shoe is coming out, the belt is coming out. So it's almost like a conditioning system where you don't want to get hit by the belt, so you start learning the equations. That kind of makes the memory circuits a little bit stronger, and end of the day, you're better. But it's like a very rudimentary thing. It shouldn't be acceptable, and I hope no one actually does this. I know it happens, but yeah, please don't do this. It's horrible. Anyway, that was habituation. Now, operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is basically, okay, I'm going to read this out and then I'm going to kind of explain it. Process of learning in which the likelihood of a specific behavior is increased by a positive or negative reinforcement. You say you do the math problem, yeah? And I tell you that, okay, I'm not going to hit you with a belt. You go, great, my life's great, I'm not getting hit by a belt. Yes? So, what's going to happen is that this is a negative reinforcement that if you don't do the math, I'm going to hit you with a belt. So, you're kind of pushed into doing the problem. So, a specific behavior, that is you doing the math problem, is increasing, right? So that's basically it. Retrograde amnesia, like we said, it's just flip the two. It's pretty simple, really. Sensitization. Sensitization is basically the behavioral response that gets increased following a noxious stimulus. Uh, Again, I'm sorry if I'm coming back to the belt so often, but I've seen it so many times. It's kind of pretty common and it kind of gets a point across. So again, so if I try to hit you with a belt, right, you're going to flinch. Yes, you're going to flinch because it's a reflex. But let's say every time I hit you with a belt, I say, I'm going to hit you with a belt. Over time, what's going to happen is that even if I don't hit you with a bit, and I just say, okay, I'm going to hit you with a bit, you're going to flinch, right? That response is going to be there. So there is an exaggeration of an existing response, even though the stimulus was not as intense, right? So this is sensitization. Believe it or not, habituation is negative learning and negative memory, and sensitization is positive memory. It's just good information to keep in your mind. Now let's look at working memory. Now, working memory is basically the prefrontal cortex. Working memory involves everything like you talking, you decide that you want to go out with your friends, you decide that you want to go out to party, you decide you want to go study. Your consciousness and your understanding of your surroundings as well as yourself comes from the prefrontal cortex, hence that's your working memory. You know who you are, you know who your parents are, and you know what you're supposed to do. These are the basic things that we test. Uh, so that's just a working memory. It's pretty simple, not really that difficult. Now let's look at learning. Learning is basically the acquiring of knowledge, right? The method by which you acquire knowledge is are the several types of learning. Now you may have read a lot of stuff or seen on YouTube that some people are visual learners, some people are kinesthetic learners. If I'm being honest with you, what I realize is that yes, it's true, some people are more adept, but it's better to try every type of learning. Let's say that you learn 10% by reading, you learn 20% by hearing, and you learn 60% by writing. Would you not just go up to the 90% by doing the writing, the reading, and the hearing, right? I think 60 plus 20 plus 10, that's 90. Or would you rather just, write and get to 60%? Like, it's not enough if you just do the things that you're good at. Like, I think that's a very important message that should be given to people of today. Anyway, so memory is the storage of the knowledge. So in your brain box, the big clunk of biological goo you call a brain, what's going to happen is that you learned something new. You learned how to spell your name. Amazing. You're a genius, Einstein level. So what you're going to want to do, what the brain wants to do, is that it wants to store this information in a tiny box, and it just stores it away. Whenever you want it, you can just retrieve it, right? That's memory. Now, I'm not going to go into the various different types of memory. That's more of an academic thing. If you want to, you can go search out declarative memory and all that stuff, or application memory, or working memory. We already talked about. There's different types of memory, and yeah, it's the same difference between you reading that uh, Mount Everest is the tallest peak, and you just know it, like, yeah, Mount Everest is tallest. Someone asks you an MCQ, you can answer it. And the difference between you learning how to ride a bike, I'm recently learning how to ride a bike. It's pretty tough, but seems doable. uh, Same thing, like when to hold the clutch, when to let go of the accelerator, when do you brake, how do you brake, uh, how you're not supposed to kind of leave the clutch and push the accelerator uh, in you're supposed to do them both in the same time. You have to get the timing down. But the thing is that right now what I'm seeing is that I'm thinking about all these things. I'm thinking about when the car is going to come from the other side, and all these things are not exactly automatic. So I'm pretty sure most of the guys who ride a bike, especially the some of the dunderheads out there, they're not thinking this much. I promise you this much. They don't think this much. So how are they able to ride bikes? It's because of the application memory. Because they've ridden bikes a lot, they've fallen, they understand it, and they go, yep, okay, that didn't work. Will not do it again. Would not recommend. That's basically it about application memory. You can search these terms up if you want, but I wouldn't bother. Uh, Classical conditioning and operant conditioning. Now we're coming to kind of like the fun part. So classical conditioning, Pavlovian conditioning, I think we already talked about. Operant conditioning or Skinnerian learning is basically, I'm going to explain to you like an example. Like, okay, say there's a rat, okay, in a box, and the box has a lever. The rat is, kind of chilling. It's exploring the box, and then it touches this lever. This lever that it doesn't know what to do, but it's curious. So let's just say it pulls the lever, and the some cheese drops into the box. So over time, what's going to happen is that the rat brain will think lever equals cheese. Cheese equals food, hence lever equals food. Food equals happiness, so lever equals happiness. I put the same lever with but let's say it gives like an electric shock. It's not even going to study that lever. It's going to immediately push it thinking that, oh, I'm just going to get some food, but it's going to get a shock. And now it's going to learn, okay, you should check, right? And these are just, type conditioning that you understand. Operant conditioning is basically this. Not much to it, right? Now, what's a thought? Now, I'm not a philosophy guy. Uh, I don't really delve in that kind of stuff. Uh, Deep stuff like what is a thought? Uh, I'm not the kind of person to talk about this, but I'm just going to tell you the biological aspects. Don't care about the philosophy. Philosophy is for the other kind of nerds. Holistic theory of thought. It's Holistic theory of thought is basically that thoughts occur because the cerebral cortex, the thalamus, the reticular formation of the brain, and all these areas will fire simultaneously that will create a pattern. Okay, when you're thinking about noodles, your brain has a certain firing pattern. When you're thinking about dogs, separate pattern. You think about dogs eating noodles, separate pattern again. So thought is basically like a combination of this, that multiple patterns are running together. I mean, a single thought is a single pattern, but and I'm going to come down to what happens when you have multiple thoughts. When you have streams of thoughts, that's a consciousness, right? And now consciousness is something, again, it's a little different. Like sentience and conscience are a little bit different. That sentience is when you become self-aware, right? Consciousness, like a dog is conscious, a dog is sentient too, because if you kick the dog is, it's going to try to protect itself, so it's self-aware. So it's conscious and it's sensitive, and it's like sentient. Yes. So basically, consciousness, you can kind of summarize it. This is the way that I think about it. I don't think it's given in a textbook, but a stream of thought in which you are aware of your surroundings. I'm not talking about your self awareness, that is sentience or human consciousness, right? If an alien comes tomorrow, so you can kind of say if it's sentient or not. So if I, take try to hurt it, will it try to protect itself? If it does, then it's self aware. That's why most computers, they're, you can say they're conscious, but they're not sentient, right? Like I think like some of them, they have become sentient, but they are conscious. But most of the AI, they are conscious, but they're not sentient. Uh, God save us if AI ever becomes fully sentient. Then it's going to become self-aware. It's See, the thing about self-awareness is that it's a very complex thing. Like for guys or girls or any human being, you look in a mirror, you see your you see your flaws. Most women, even some guys these days, will apply makeup, they'll try to cover up those flaws, and they'll go, yep, there's no flaws anymore, I'm ready to go. So this is a aspect of consciousness where basically what's happening is your self-awareness is kind of guiding you to cover those flaws up, even though they don't really matter. Like for me, like glasses or without glasses, I don't really look that different, right? uh, Haircut, I should probably get a haircut, but this stuff doesn't really bother me. Someone else, who's really conscious about how they look, how they act, they're going to look at me and they're going to say, oh, your hair's not cut. Oh, you shouldn't wear glasses. You look very nerdy in glasses. So this this kind of consciousness you don't want, right? But I'm just trying to explain to you a very human side of consciousness, which I've observed. Anyway, let's look at memory. Now, we're basically going to look at several different types of memory. We're going to look at positive, negative memory, and after positive, negative memory, we're going to look at the short term, intermediate, long term, and what changes happen. So, memory is built from memory traces. What are memory traces? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I just mostly told you even numbers in a progressive order except for the 9. So it's not really an order. So when you try to repeat it, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, then it's a memory trace. It's a new memory that you've created. So it's a facilitated pathway that has been made. Now you keep hammering these 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. Now it's kind of hammered into your brain. Like you just remember it. Now that's the permanence of the memory trace. But if I ask you in an hour, you probably won't be able to remember. Anyway, so let's look at positive and negative memory. So the greater form of memory is negative memory. Negative memory is basically from noxious stimulus. I'm pretty sure it's kind of self-explanatory why negative memory is more, because we're apes, right? We're not exactly kings and queens of the jungle. Tomorrow if a lion shows up and we can't really do anything, then I don't I don't know about you, but personally I would just start running. So we're always looking at threats, we're looking at what can go wrong, what kind of effect someone else may have on us. We're always looking for this kind of thing. So most of our memory is negative. For kids, if you look at them and they'll plunge their hand into the fire and they go, oh, that hurt. And they'll just, go like, okay, not doing that again. You fall from a bike, you realize, same examples, same theory. Kind of understand this, right? Habituation and sensitization. Habituation we already discussed. It's basically inhibition of the response. And sensitization we also discussed. Short-term memory. An example of short-term memory we just told you, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Circuit theory is basically when you repeat the pathways over and over again. So the transmission through the pathways become a little bit easier. But always remember, in short-term memory, there are no changes to physical or chemical to the pathways themselves, right? Then there's the presynaptic facilitation inhibition, that some things will get facilitated, which will make it easier to go into short-term memory. For example, if I tell you that, hey, I'm going to, you know, do this random thing at a random time, you're not going to remember, right? If I told you that I'm going to go brush in 7 a.m. in the morning, uh, you'll say, okay, that's normal. But if I told you that I'm going to kick someone down the stairs and I'm going to stab them, you're going to remember, right? You better remember this. But yeah, some things will get facilitated that you hear and go like, oh, That sounds a bit weird. What is that? So, okay, your brain kind of understands that brushing in the morning, normal, throwing someone down the stairs and stabbing them, not normal, right? Now, intermediate memory. Intermediate term memory is the pacification. So the chemical changes will start taking place. So I actually have a diagram which I can show you, right? Everyone can see this diagram, I hope. So basically, this is the presynaptic terminal. This is the postsynaptic terminal. This is a facilitator terminal. What it means is that when there is a noxious stimulus, it's going to activate serotonin. Serotonin will kind of facilitate more transmission, more easier transmission, more synaptic vesicles, more presynaptic terminal, more amount of stimulus is being generated. So it sensitizes you, right? Okay, where were we? Where were we? Yeah, here we are. So facilitation theory is basically the theory that if a noxious stimulus is given, the facilitator terminal will get activated, which will cause easier passage of the theory, right? Now, the converse theory is just noxious stimulus thing. And yeah, one thing I didn't mention, if it's like reading your least favorite book, like for me, it was Hindi in middle school. I hated that subject. And, I would take the Hindi grammar book and I would start reading it whenever I wanted to sleep. It was that bad. I fall asleep at airports, airplanes, late night. I'm not able to sleep. Works every time, man. Just read the Hindi book, and yeah, you're out. And we talked about this molecular mechanism is basically uh, if this is the habituation stuff that if facilitator terminal is not getting kind of activated, then the calcium channels and everything will just start slowing down. Presynaptic vessel goes down, presynaptic terminal is down, everything goes down. That's the molecular mechanism. Here I've just written one line, which is also correct. Long-term memory, there are structural changes, which we just talked about. The vesicular release sites will increase. The terminal vesicles will increase. Presynaptic terminal. When there is a structural change, it's a long-term memory. Yeah. So with this, we kind of conclude, and just for the layman, at the end of it, what I'm going to tell you is I'm going to summarize all the memories very quickly. Short-term memory, just by one example, okay? Imagine that you're working at some place that requires you to remember a set of numbers, let's say a 10-digit number. How would you go forward in trying to remember them? You would repeat them over and over in your head, right? You try to find a pattern, you try to find something there. So when you repeat it over and over, that's a short-term memory. Now what happens is that you are going to go to sleep. And in my sleep video, I think I explained this concept where the brain replays circuits, right? So if you said 10 numbers really quickly, you know, right now your brain replays it 20 times faster. So you have higher retention. Now tomorrow you're going to have more vesicles. You're going to have more sites, and the facilitator terminals will get activated, because if your boss threatens to fire you, that's a noxious stimulus, right? Now it's going to go into intermediate memory. So for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you're going to remember it. Now let's say that particular number was your employee ID number, which you're going to need every day. You're going to put the numbers in, hit enter, and you're through, and you're going through the office. You fail to do that, you don't get to work for that day. Let's say it's a very brutal system, but let's say for the sake of understanding, this is how the long-term memory will function, is that if you just do it and there's a threat of you getting it wrong, your brain will automatically try to rotate the information as many times so that you never make a mistake. So this is how I think the words come that practice makes perfect, because biologically it's very evident. Thank you for listening, everyone. I'm a bit tired today, so maybe not that much energy as normal, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, videos have not been doing that well. Initially, they were doing great, but now they've kind of stopped, which is understandable, but it still crushes me, right? Okay, thank you.